Welcome to the 7th episode of the Farms of BC podcast. My name is Jay Cack, and today we're going to be sitting down with Nav to discuss the Agricultural Land Commission. Now, if you're a farmer here in BC, this episode is for you. Stay tuned. All right, Nav, so today we're discussing Agricultural Land Commission and, of course, the Agricultural Land Reserve.
That's right.
They kind of go hand in hand, but we're going to go a little bit more into the differences between them. But first and foremost, what qualifies us to discuss this? I suppose you and me both have experience within farming and, of course, at scale. Our families are both operating at scale in the farming world. So we understand, mostly because we've run into issues with the ALR or the ALC, right? So we know kind of where the borders are and how to work with them. But at the same time, there's a lot of issues with that. So this may be a little bit more controversial. This may be, things that we propose should be happening, and kind of going on that basis. Now, what is the Agricultural Land Commission?
Well, Agricultural Land Commission is a committee of 6 members that represents BC in 6 different sections. And within those sections, they have 2 to 3 members within themselves. And then there's the Ministry of Agriculture, which oversees all of the Land Commission. Now, the Land Commission is a group of people that make decisions on applications, amendments, anything to do with changes within the land commissions for rules, regulations. They also they'll also enforce. So if anybody is breaking those rules and regulations, they'll come in and enforce that, just like how bylaw would, right? And this Agricultural Land Commission was established in 1972. So it is quite old. And I don't think there's been many changes since 1972, aside from the governments in between that time. Since then, and it was created by the NDP, and it was agreed upon, and it was followed through by every other government that came in power at that time. And these members, or these 6 chairs that are built up these within the Land Commission in BC, they are appointed every time the government changes. So right now the NDP's in power, they get to pick the 6 members. Say if Liberals or Conservatives ever come in again, or Green Party, they'll be able to pick appointed members for that as well. Again, same thing with the agricultural minister, they get appointed within their party.
Yeah, and the ALC, basically their mandate is just to preserve land, right? Strictly for agriculture.
Yeah, so when they came out with this, creating this reserve on land for agriculture, their main mandate was to preserve these lands strictly for agriculture. A while back I read, this was, I forget where it was, but the reason why the big push was because of the gold rush earlier in that time. They really had, there was a lot of mining going on. And so they were really digging up a lot of these lands and the farmland and things like that. That's why this was always been a problem. So that's why they came up and they restricted and put this agricultural land reserve where there was no mining allowed, no development, nothing like that. And it's funny because when we sell farm properties today, you'll always see on the land titles, it'll say undersurface rights given to some random company back in like 1940s. 50s, 60s, they don't apply, or who knows even if those companies are around, but some of these farmers back then would have sold for who knows what dollar amount, very minimal, saying that, hey, if they ever strike gold or oil or whatever, that company would have bought those rights. So it's funny, we still see that till this day. Like we'll see undersurface rights that they're sold,
Okay, well, on the other side, there's Agricultural Land Reserve.
Yeah.
So what is the difference between the reserve and the commission?
So the reserve is related to the actual farmland. Okay. So the agricultural land reserve, that these lands are reserved for agriculture. The Agricultural Land Commission is a group of committee members that make those decisions. Now, speaking of the Agricultural Land Commission, that is a body that oversees BC and the agricultural properties. When it comes to when it comes to the advisory committee, so each municipality has their own municipal government or their own municipal committees. So they call themselves the Agricultural Advisory Committee for the city. Now, they can't vote on anything. Well, they can't, they're an opinion. So anytime there's a development, anytime there's a rule change within the city for agriculture, the mayor and council will table the opinion to the committee first before they make a decision, because there are actual farmers that sit on that committee. They'll know how that will impact the farming and within that city. Now, that's the Agriculture Advisory Committee. Then there's the BC government, which is the Land Commission. And then above that on the federal level is the Ministry of Agriculture.
Yeah, see, that's one of the things that I feel like is causing the delays in development. And a lot of the things that even permits or whatever the case may be, there's just so many multiple levels of government you got to get through. If it's all within the rules and regulations, which are pretty dense, they're pretty hard to get through, then it's not a problem, right? Yeah. Then you can just kind of get it approved right away. But if there's even one slight variance that you got to go through, you got to go through multiple levels to get it done.
It's usually the advisory committee and then the land commission. When it comes to multiple levels of government, especially that are overlooking one type of product, you're right. The timeline for an approval or even an answer, it used to take, I've had people wait 6 months to 2 years, depending on what they were asking. The one good thing that in 2019, when the NDP came in and started making a lot of rule changes, they created a 90-day turnaround. That the Agricultural Land Commission and the city will give you an answer within 90 days.
I've heard that that's not been happening.
No, it has not? Okay. Yeah, but that's kind of the mandate they kind of wanted to roll out.
I have heard that it came into play, but I haven't seen it yet. So.
Haven't seen it? No.
I've had a few, but I've just heard from other people as well. And people, even like consultants in the area, right, that are saying it's just not happening.
It's not happening fast enough, Do you think COVID was a factor that...
I don't know if it's the pandemic, COVID, or what it is, but I mean, it could be, right? Because it came in 2019 and then all that massive...
pent-up demand of whatever changes that people wanted to do now, it's all backlogged.
Right, and just the slowing down because of the pandemic could be a factor, absolutely. So now, how do you apply to the ALC if you wanted to make some changes, or you're trying to go through bylaw, or if you did want to make a variation?
Prior to 2019, before these new rule changes came in, you would just apply to the city. I mean, you would apply to Land Commission directly for an amendment or a change of use, change of zoning, just anything that's not within the bylaw. You would apply to them, they would get back to you whenever they felt like it. Then prior to 2019, again, they made this portal system where because a lot of farmers were complaining that we weren't getting a response fast enough, they created a portal system where you would apply everything online. You would upload all your documents. It was a good program, good system, and you'd still go directly to the ALC. Then in 2019, after that, there was a bill that was passed that a farmer or an individual cannot apply directly to the ALC. So what happens is you would have to apply to the city first, and now the city has to apply on your behalf. So that rule change came in, I believe it was Bill 19, and they changed that rule where the city now has to apply on your behalf. You can't apply on your own for whatever change you want.
I'm assuming that's probably because the ALC was bumping it back to the city anyways. And
there was a lot of that back and forth. And I think what the underlining issue is, like we spoke earlier, with multiple levels of government, when prior to 2019, the city would never give you an answer. They'll say apply to the Land Commission because the provincial body their decision is going to override municipal decision anyways. So they would just always say, hey, go apply to the land commission. What happened is the land commission say if they did do a change and the city didn't like it, then there would be a problem. So now they're looking on the provincial government is looking at each municipal government and saying, okay, you go see if this works in your city first, this change that you want on your lands, before you come to the land commission, which I think is honestly, I think it is the better way. You know, if you don't have local support, how are you going to have provincial backing, right? So unless if it's something that you have a good valid reason. I guess it goes both ways if you really think about it. Like, you know, sometimes municipalities are biased too, right? They have their own agenda. They wanna have certain things a certain way. But if a farmer is being blocked from farming or growing, they should have the right to apply directly to the ALC and plead their case.
It's just annoying when one of the parties agrees. Like, for example, one level of government agrees, but the other government denies it, which is so like.
Well, it's that circus. You're going to have to jump through one hoop, then the other hoop, and it just continues, right?
Yeah, and there's always some sort of technicality that, you know, wasn't very obvious or you know, explained properly, and then it's like, okay, we got to start all over.
I'm hoping that in the future, like, and I think the good thing is they recognize this as a problem. Yeah. And they're navigating and working through it where they're trying to figure out solutions to kind of streamline it. And it's hard to streamline something where, you know, every application is going to be completely different, right? And their needs and wants are going to be completely different. So it takes a longer time to sit, review before they move forward, right?
And I agree with most of what they're doing. It's just like these little things. There's sometimes where they'll implement a change that's favorable, and then they'll implement something that just makes it more difficult, right? So it's just a little bit of everything, right?
Catch-22,
Yeah, it's tough. So in terms of coverage of land, how much is actually covered by the ALC and the ALR?
So the agricultural land reserve, there's about a 5% of the total land of BC is designated for the agricultural land reserve for food and food production. That being said, we do most of our work out here in the Fraser Valley, Greater Vancouver. We're not seeing only 5%. The challenge we see in BC, the Fraser Valley, Greater Vancouver, is that from Richmond to Chilliwack and all the cities in between, I would say more than 50% of each city's land mass is in the land reserve. So I know we always hear this from the media, the news. They'll always say, it's only 5%. Why would we amend something when it's only 5%? The land mass is only 5%. The challenge that you and I and all the farmers and even municipal governments are seeing is that 50% of, let's say 75 to 80% of BC's population is here in the Fraser Valley, Greater Vancouver. Yeah, that's right. And what the challenge is more than 50% of their land mass is in the land reserve.
That's where the pressure is.
That's where the pressure,
It makes sense at the end of the day, right? Because this is what people are speculating eventually will, you know, have to change because it's just too much pressure in this area, right? That's where everybody is.
Well, if you look at the valley itself, when it comes to just say future growth and population growth, the cities are going to have to grow, right? So on the north side, you have mountains. On the south side, you have the US border. On the west side, you have the ocean. On the east side, you have all ALR properties going up into mountains then for living, right? So, and where you can't develop in mountain area, even though that's not farmable, that's not designated agricultural land, but it's also not developable land either. And where most of the industry, most of the population, where most of the growth is happening is here in the Fraser Valley, Greater Vancouver.
And I guess one of the reasons that maybe they can say is actually reasonable, or where they're trying to kind of come from, is that this is the most productive land in the area as well, in BC, right? So I mean, I understand that part. But even so, if this is where everybody's going to be living, what other option is there?
Well, I think they're going to have to, definitely, there's going to have to be some changes. It's either going to have to be bylaw changes to amend, to cater to still preserving the agricultural land reserve as is and not taking any properties out of ALR, or look at something that lines were drawn in 1972 and reassess where the current market is, reassess and plan how the next 100, 200 years look like, and say, are these certain pockets that we've designated for agricultural land reserve, should they be taken out?
Yeah.
Was this the best decision? Maybe at that time it was, but now, as how fast they see that the city's growing, how fast immigration is coming in, how fast industry is growing and manufacturing is growing, they're going to have to look at some of these areas and say, hey, maybe we should reassess some of these properties, right?
That's right. And I mean, it has been over 50 years now, right? So
well, if you think about it, it's only 50 years. And look at the problem, the tightening we're already feeling. What's going to happen in another 50 years? And you see, so you've got this NDP government that applied this in 1972. Now you've got full circle, the same government, regardless if they were in this position or liberal or conservative, there's a housing problem. And you're seeing them now coming out to solve this rent control, creating more density. So how do they do that? They're saying, let's take these existing bigger houses and allow duplexes, fourplexes, but then they've got this land mass that they've put in the land reserved for agriculture, and it's all just sitting there. But in 2019, they went and they said, no big housing, no multiple houses or residents on farmland. Right. But at the same time, we've got this problem. So, the land mass in itself, it's a big chunk. Like, not you look at all the provinces from Alberta all the way east, they don't really have, they've got a designated agricultural area, but they don't have a reserve. So they'll assess it at that time, and they'll make a decision based on how everything's growing, right? But you're right, the valley from Richmond to Chilliwack, we've got some of the most beautiful farmland for growing. But we visit farmland every day. There are a lot of pockets that just can't be farmed. And I think that's what I'm talking about, of just really looking at every single municipality and saying, okay, which pockets are farmable, which areas are not farmable, which areas, if we do amend, what can we build here, right? So the two biggest things I see of being a future problem is residential and industrial land. These will be big problems for land mass.
So how is this affecting residential housing and industrial land?
When you're capped in a certain box or a pocket and you can't see growth, like we cannot just make 1,000 houses. We can't grow out that fast because you're capped from all those the mountains, the ocean, and the land reserve. What tends to happen is it's a supply and demand issue. There's just not enough supply. When there's not enough supply, prices tend to go up. And then when you look at the supply side, well, you can say, hey, you can always build up. That's true. But you look at the red tape that the municipal governments have set forth. To do an application for a turnaround for a development, it takes almost about 8 months to about 2 years, depending what the applicant wants. Right. And the red tape to get through that, it slows down all development. Now with COVID that came around, now with the current interest rate environment, you're seeing developers hold their projects even further. Supply chains now have started coming back to somewhat normal. Not all. I know concrete has still been a big issue. You're looking at these developers. You've got this uncertainty for materials and goods. Then you've got this timeline of waiting from the municipalities, and then you've got this interest rate environment. So what we're going to see here is we are going to see low supply for the next year or two, for them to just somewhat catch up. But we've got the federal government increasing how much immigration is going to be coming in. So you know the population's coming.
Yeah.
We know we don't have enough housing. So what happens is prices go up and then rents go up because there's just not enough.
And that also leads into the industrial land requiring more
Yeah.
space and everything else
Yeah.
because there's business coming in, right? So,
Or more businesses want to come in,
yeah.
and more people are going to need these jobs,
Mhm.
but there's no industrial land left to build out for infrastructure. For like, you kind of see what happened in COVID in 2019, 2020, 2021, when we were relying on foreign countries for our goods, everything was stopped.
Right.
You saw a shortage, though we don't have enough of this, and we're the supply chain. We were relying too much on other countries. What I foresee is that the Canadian government is, and every single country, just within their own countries, they're going to want to see local manufacturing.
Mhm.
Some higher levels than what it is today.
Right.
And in order to have more manufacturing, you need more industrial land, which we just don't have enough of. And if you look at the prices of industrial land today, it's not even affordable.
Mhm.
It's completely out of arm's reach, and it's just going to get more and more expensive because there's not enough of it, unless if something's done.
Not only that, I mean, even just that's going from ag land to industrial land. It's even difficult just to go from ag land to agri-industrial, like just in between, where
Yeah.
it's, for agricultural purposes or
Yeah.
food processing,
Yeah.
it's become difficult to even get to that level.
Yeah.
And I only know maybe a few properties that actually have that designation,
Mm-hmm.
and they're very rare. And once you actually get that, I've been told the cost to get that was astronomical.
Yeah.
Right? And so the value of that land obviously is very high, but if there was more ability to get into that kind of a designation, there'd be a lot more food processing happening. There'd be a lot more production for the rest of BC.
Yeah, no, I do agree. Like, there's industrial land and there's agri-industrial. Now, what fits in that agri-industrial box?
Yeah.
Some things like food packaging, food processing. So just taking your raw food goods, either vegetables, it could be vegetables, it could be meats, it could be anything that's grown on a farm, and packaging in a package and selling it. The challenge we're seeing with that is who's like, you go to a grocery store and you're like, oh my God, these prices are so high.
Mhm.
So people automatically relate that the farmers are making so much money. What they don't understand is actually the grocery stores making all the money. The farmers are actually making the smallest percentage, barely enough to cover costs, or they won't have enough room to grow. What I see with agri-industrial is that the farmer should be, so I call that a resource. It's the natural resource is the actual product. It could be blueberries, it could be vegetables, it could be corn, it could be any sort of meats, anything that's grown as a food product, in my opinion, should be allowed to build a facility and enhance that product to create more products. Value add. But right now you're not allowed to do that according to the bylaw. How you can produce your raw good and how you can package it. You can only package that raw good. You can't create another product. So I'll give you an example. In Surrey, there's been a local case that a local farmer, very reputable, has been in the business for a very long time, farms over thousands of acres of potatoes. They had on site, they had a potato manufacturing, so to create potato chips, fries.
Right.
They were not allowed to do that. Out of the same raw good that they created to enhance it, to create more products, to enhance their business, they were not allowed to do that. Now they're obviously going through the process, but the amount of pushback they're getting, and the way the media had turned it into, they're trying to convert this farmland into industrial. No, they're trying to take the existing product, having the municipality and provincial government on board for allowing them to grow into different products within the same good.
Yeah.
So that goes for blueberries. When you have blueberries or a certain berry, you should be able to create jams. You should be able to create a juice. You should be able to create any food product that that uses that raw good. But you're not allowed on farmland. What they want you to do is take that raw good, process just that raw good on site, and then go buy an industrial property to go and do the manufacturing to create that product. So you can mash up the blueberries, or you can turn it into juice on site. But in order to create a juice box facility or some sort of, you'd have to go off site and do it on industrial land. So like you see the disconnect, like first off, we don't have enough industrial land.
Right.
We've got all of this agricultural land. We've got a farmer that's been legitimately farming and has a business and is doing packing. Why can't he increase that packing? Yeah, so he might sell blueberries in containers. He wants to get in juices. He wants to get in jams. He wants to enhance that, but he can't.
Yeah.
On site.
Right. It's their own raw product.
It's their own raw product, but they're capped. Yeah. So that's one form of agri-industrial that should be allowed on individual farms. Yeah. And then there's the bigger ones, which is more controversial, is freezers. Agricultural freezers. Right. So you look, there's not enough. Because there's not much land mass, because there's not enough land mass, a lot of people are using these now warehouses for actual manufacturing, like whatever it may be, but they're not building that many more freezers. Majority of the freezers are all full. So why not create an area that has, say, if they're not a farmer that's growing, but anything that's food related products, why not sector that into agri-industrial some way, somehow? There was a farmer / developer, I believe it was in Abbotsford or Chilliwack. They were trying to create an area that got denied for agricultural equipment, to sell agricultural equipment. So they were going to have like a John Deere, a Kubota, a Messi. So they were going to create like a subdivision for a dealership just for farm equipment. It would have been amazing. Right now, it's like going to the Richmond Auto Mall. You'd go to the Abbotsford, whatever mall for farm equipment. It would be one-stop shop. They denied it. Right. Even though that's not directly like the product, it's not built on farm, but it's completely related to agriculture. Right now, to have a tractor dealership, you have to be on industrial land or commercial land. So you look at some of these things and these are just too basic. There must be hundreds of applications that we're just not aware of that just get denied or passed.
Yeah, for example, Chilliwack, there's a few designated AFP, agricultural food production designations. Yep. For parcels. That's where we see the Molson Canadian coming in. That's where we see the Red Bull coming in.
You have to now think. Yeah. Prior to Molson, prior to Red Bull, prior to all these big companies coming in, how much was that utilized prior to them coming in? Never. So you never see that. So what happened is a bigger corporation with big backing, big name, international name, like a big company, comes in, and guess what? The city bends over backwards and the provincial government bends over backwards for them. But the farmer, that's the smaller player, right, they are not allowed to do that on the same type of land. Yeah. You see that disconnect? But then we have all of these, imagine the industrial is actually used for industrial. It's used for trucking. It's used for shipping and receiving. It's used for manufacturing. And what if we took the food products out of that and put that on farmland? I'm not saying let's take out all this land and turn it into industrial, but there has to be some change. Where that change comes from, how that change is made, either you take it out of ALR or you rezone it, or you create these special zonings.
And it should be really determined based on each individual plot, because there's some that are, just not capable of producing. Yeah. In terms of agriculture, right? And how many do we see ALR designation on that are just out there? It's like a ravine or something else, or whatever the case may be, right? Yeah. There's so many of those.
Well, when it comes to ravines, I think you're always going to have that fishery stuff. Yeah. I think where I see a lot of farmland that is just not farmable is when you see completely it's all clay.
Yeah, that too.
It's very rare that you can grow a lot of product on there. So you look at some of these lands, and you also have to look at floodplain, water courses, impact on other agricultural properties in the area. But there are a lot of products that I'm aware of, a lot of properties that I'm aware of where they should really relook at some of those areas and say, hey, is this the best use for agriculture, right?
So we know changing zoning is difficult within the ALC,
Yeah.
but how can we really adapt to these growing problems? I know we spoke a little bit on the industrial side, but more on the residential side, what do you think are some proposals we can make that would actually help?
So let's go back. Prior to 2019, prior to NDP coming in, if you had 10 or more acres, you're allowed to build 2 homes. In certain municipalities, if you had 20 acres, you could build 2 homes. 2019, because of all these big houses that were getting built, they wanted to cap the size 100%. You and I talked about this before. We do agree that there was maybe 1% that took complete advantage of that, but they came in very hard to stop that, and then they limited it pretty unfairly for the farmer. But they also restricted the second house. So then they came back and they said, you know what, we're just last year, they said, going back 2019, they changed it to 5,400 square feet. Then they said no second residences. Then the farmer spoke out and they said, okay, fine, you're allowed to have a mobile home or a second house or a rental suite in a barn up to 900 square feet. That's the current rule where it's at today. 900 square feet is probably a 1-bedroom. It's not enough for a second generation's family to live there, which has multiple kids. It's not enough. It's not big enough to have farm workers. Yeah. It is okay for farm rental, like say if you wanted to just rent out a 1-bedroom. Yeah. But that doesn't solve the actual farming issue. The way I think they should do it is it should be a sliding scale. And I don't agree with the 5,400 square foot rule. You have this footprint that you've imaginally created for every farmer. I think you should allow them to build whatever they want in there, however they want in there. They want to build a 2-story house, if it allows it, let them. If it's 3-story, allow them. If it's 2,000 or if they want 12,000, as long as it fits in that area, allow them. I believe they should go back to the rule of giving multiple pad areas for specific farm sizes. As you and I know, most hobby farmers are looking for 10 acres and below, right? Chances are they're going to be small scale farmers, hobby farmers, local farmers. When you look at someone that's on a commercial scale, where you know you've got multi-families and then the second, third generations involved into their farming operations, allow them to have multiple houses, something to cater to these families to grow. Let's just use 5,400 square feet. Let's just use that as, say if that is the current rule and you're allowed a 900 square foot mobile home, that's fine. Anything less than 5 acres, allow that. Anything, or say even up to 10, they can pick this rule. Anything under 10 acres, a 5,400 square foot house and a mobile home. Allow them a bigger mobile home. Allow them up to even a 2 to 3 bedroom mobile home. Anything between 10 to 20, allow them a bigger second home. So maybe up to 2,500 to 3,000 square feet, scale it. But the main house stays the same. You're allowed that footprint or you're allowed just the 5,400. Now let's go into 20 acres. When you're say 20 to 40 acres, allow them to have a bigger home and say the second bigger home and say a mobile. Say if you're over 40 or 50 acre parcel, allow them to have 3 big reasonable size residences. You have the father, you have say maybe 2 children that want to live on the farm with their families. And then also allow them to enhance, because they're obviously a big farm operation, allow them to enhance their agricultural business, which say if they're growing blueberries or if they're growing any type of vegetable, or if they want to get into vertical farming, that they're allowed to do that on their land, as long as it's with that product and they're using that raw good within that product that they're creating. Think about how farming is going to be in 100 years. Think about how farming is going to be in 200 years. If we don't allow these smaller changes to happen slowly, you're going to start seeing people exiting farming. And you're starting to already see that. You're seeing a mass exit of bigger commercial farmers struggling to pay their bills. Interest rates are high. The raw goods and materials for fertilizer, for any pesticides, all the cost is up, labor is up. But guess what? The farmer is making the same amount that he made almost 5 to 10 years ago, but the cost is now double. What do you think is going to happen to that second generation of farming? It's done. So the only other option is allow these farmers to amend some of these bylaws within the residential so they don't have to go buy separate houses. They can invest on the farm. Now they're more invested, allow the operational changes so they can grow the operation and create more products.
More innovation.
More innovation. Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's been said before, but the farmer is the one that pays retail and then sells wholesale. Right? Yeah. And they just get screwed on both ends, right? Yeah. It's just one of those things. And if they're able to add value to their product, it allows them to make more of the bottom line to themselves. Right?
They get to control the product. They get to control everything, right? Yeah. The one thing I really get angry about with this industry is nobody speaks up. Mm-hmm. There's nobody that the Agricultural Land Commission will make a change. Mm-hmm. They'll do it behind closed doors. They'll announce it within about 3 months, and automatically everything changes. No public discussion, no public hearings. If your land mass is that big, 5% is still a big land mass for BC. Why are these municipalities not coming forward? Because they should have known that these rules and changes are coming. Why are they not holding local public hearings at City Hall? They've got a place, they've got a location, they've got a panel area. People should be able to put their submissions in and have a conversation. If you look at these municipal advisory committees, there's farmers that are sitting on there majority of them don't even farm. Or if they farm, they had farmed in the past and they don't farm currently. Or they've got a 5-acre farm in there which farming does not impact them aggressively. Why are not bigger farmers sitting on these advisory committees that have the most risk, the most impact? We're not seeing that. ALC, Agricultural Land Commission, these people that are appointed in some of these seats are not all farmers. They haven't ran through that situation. Or maybe have those 6 locations of those chairs should be from those local areas. They should have a farming background. They should be maybe an existing farmer. Because it impacts them differently than somebody that used to farm 20, 30 years ago. Because farming has changed now and it's going to change in the future, right? We need to be planning our agricultural properties not for today or for 10 years, or to please the public that don't have any invested interest in farming. We need to think about what farming looks like for 100 years, for 200 years, and then start planning these rules and regulations. I'm not saying let's throw all these out in the next 5 years. Let's slowly adapt and roll into them, make small changes, and then grow and adapt as how the economy grows and adapts and changes, with still preserving the land to grow food and still preserving what the land reserve was meant for. So we need to be clear is we do want change, but we don't want it all to go away because we do believe in food security.
Yeah. It's a proper mandate that they have, and it is necessary because there's a lot of folks out there, because agricultural land is the cheapest land you can get for. And then people are trying to get into it with industrial means or trying to do some industrial product or whatever the case may be on agricultural land just because it's so much cheaper than industrial land. And we understand that, right? And we understand the reason for having ALC in place. And we're all for it. It's just a little bit of communication goes a long way, right? So for real farmers, what do they need? And really kind of adjusting to that.
It's funny because the city and the provincial government, they will always say this. They will always say the members change every couple years because you have a 2-year term. Why is it that it's the same committee members just applying and getting it? Most farmers don't even know that there is an agriculture advisory committee. Most farmers, if they knew this next generation have a different voice, I'm pretty sure they're going to want to sit on those committees. Now, when politics get involved, will they be selected? That's the true question. We'll see how things change, but having a podcast like this, the main purpose is to bring awareness, is to bring change. Not only just for giving people knowledge of how to buy and sell a farm. what I really want out of this is I want people to know out there that, farming is a passion. Farming is in a lot of these families generational blood. And there's the future generation that does want to continue this. But without them knowing about a lot of these rules, regulations, knowing about these committees, knowing that the fact that they can get involved, not change will never happen. And I think that's what we as farmers, farming families, and we're completely invested. I know our families, they're going to be invested for the next generation. So we got to make sure that if change happens, change is happening for the benefit of the farmer, not for the public eye.
Awesome. Well, that pretty much covers it. Agricultural Land Commission, Agricultural Land Reserve, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah.